Hey everyone. Before we start today, I do want to give a quick content warning.
Yeah,
We're going to be talking about a true crime case today, and obviously that comes with some sensitive topics.
definitely.
So if that's not your cup of tea, totally understand. Feel free to skip this one and catch us on the next deep dive.
Absolutely.
But if you're ready to get into a case that really shook a community and got people talking all over the country,
Yeah,
well then let's get into it.
let's do it.
So today we are diving into the case of Laken Riley.
Okay.
And she was a 22-year-old nursing student at Augusta University.
Wow.
She was described as someone who never missed a single class,
Dedication.
super dedicated to her studies, to her future. And just imagine, she
Mhm.
was the kind of person you would want taking care of you or your loved ones someday.
Absolutely. The kind of person you could trust
Exactly.
with your health and well-being.
But tragically, on February 22nd, 2024, Laken went for a jog,
Okay.
like her usual morning routine,
Yeah.
on the University of Georgia campus in Athens. And she even called her mom at 9:03 a.m.
Interesting.
Just a totally normal detail, right?
Seems like it.
But it actually becomes a really crucial piece of information later on.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So as the morning goes on, Laken's mom, Allison, starts to get worried.
Hmm.
No answer to calls or texts. Nothing. And Laken's roommates also felt like something was off.
Oh, no.
And they tried using Find My iPhone,
Oh, right. Makes sense.
but all they could find was one of Laken's AirPods just sitting there on the trail.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
Just that feeling of dread.
Yeah, sinking feeling in your stomach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one of the roommates, Bully, made a frantic call to 911.
Right.
And hearing that call,
Yeah.
you can feel the fear escalating
Yeah, absolutely.
as they realize something is seriously wrong.
It must be terrifying.
Yeah, it's a really tough lesson.
I bet.
So the police responded right away.
Okay.
They launched a search at Oconee Forest Park near Lake Herrick on the UGA campus.
Okay.
And tragically, that's where they found Laken's body.
Oh my gosh.
So Sergeant C.H. of the Athens-Clarke County Police Department took the lead on this case,
Mhm.
and they knew they had to act fast.
Right.
The evidence pointed to blunt force trauma
Okay.
and signs of a struggle.
So clearly a violent attack.
Absolutely. But what was truly chilling was that there didn't seem to be a motive.
Oh, wow. That makes it even more unsettling.
Yeah, no clear reason why this happened to Laken.
Right? So it makes the investigation even harder.
It really does.
Yeah.
The investigation led them to an apartment complex near the park.
Okay.
And Sergeant Joshua E.P.S. from the UGA Police Department was reviewing security footage.
Okay.
And he spotted something strange.
Oh, what was that?
He saw a man throwing a jacket into a dumpster.
Interesting.
And later on,
Yeah.
it was confirmed that Laken's hair was found on that very jacket.
Oh, wow. So that seemingly insignificant action became a key piece of evidence.
Exactly. They were able to identify the man in the video as Jose Ibara,
Okay.
and they brought him in for questioning. And, when you start looking into Ibarra's background,
Yeah.
it reveals some troubling patterns of behavior.
What do you mean?
Well, he was an undocumented immigrant
Okay.
with prior run-ins with law enforcement.
Like what kind of run-ins?
There were allegations of assault
Oh,
and even reckless endangerment.
that's concerning.
Yeah, so it painted a picture of someone who could be potentially volatile.
Yeah. Definitely a red flag.
And remember that baseball cap they noticed in the security footage?
Yeah.
It was found at the apartment, but not on Jose.
Really?
It was actually being worn by his brother, Diego.
Oh, wow. Okay, so now we've got a brother involved.
Right, and this is where things take a bit of a turn,
Okay, I'm intrigued.
because it turns out Diego had been detained earlier that day
Really?
for possessing a fake green card.
Oh, wow.
He was released. But that detail just added another layer of ambiguity to the whole case.
Definitely complicates things.
Now, one of the most chilling pieces of evidence was Laken's interrupted 911 call. It's short, but it's haunting. You hear birds chirping,
Okay.
then suddenly stomping sounds.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a snapshot of the attack happening.
That's terrifying.
Based on all of this evidence, Jose Ibarra was arrested and charged with Laken's murder.
Okay.
And the evidence seemed pretty strong.
Right?
His DNA was found under Laken's fingernails.
Suggesting a struggle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his thumbprint was on her phone.
Oh, wow. So he was definitely there.
And then there were the injuries the police saw on Ibarra.
What kind of injuries?
Scratches and a puncture wound.
Hmm.
And they looked a lot like defensive wounds that Laken could have inflicted.
Oh, wow. So, like, she fought back.
It seems that way.
Right.
But the case wasn't a slam dunk.
Really?
Ibarra's defense argued that the evidence was mostly circumstantial,
Okay.
and they suggested that maybe Diego was actually involved.
Oh, so they're trying to shift the blame.
Exactly. They pointed to the similar DNA between the brothers,
Right, because they're related.
saying that it could have messed up the forensic analysis. And they kept bringing up the fact that Diego had the baseball cap from the video.
Interesting strategy.
And then there's this tense phone call between Ibarra and his wife from jail.
Okay.
His wife seemed really frustrated with him, skeptical of his story.
Mm-hmm.
She even asked him directly about the girl's death.
And how did he respond?
His responses were really dismissive.
Yeah.
It was unsettling to listen to.
Yeah, I bet.
So that phone call, combined with what we know about Ibarra's past, starts to paint a picture of someone who could be volatile and unpredictable.
Right, someone capable of violence.
Now, in a surprising move, Ibara waived his right to a jury trial
Oh, wow.
and opted for a bench trial instead.
So he chose to have a single judge decide his fate.
Exactly. Why do you think he made that decision?
Well, it was a risky move for sure.
Yeah.
You know, this case had become very high profile.
Right all over the news.
Yeah, and Ibarra's immigration status was a big part of the public discussion.
He was.
So it's possible his defense team thought a judge might be less swayed by public opinion.
Less emotional about it.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
more focused on the actual evidence and legal arguments.
So they were hoping for a more objective assessment.
That's likely. And it's worth remembering that the prosecution wasn't seeking the death penalty. So
Russ.
maybe knowing that made Ibarra and his lawyers more comfortable with a bench trial.
Makes sense. They might have figured a judge would be less likely to give the harshest sentence, even if he was found guilty.
It's possible. It was a gamble either way.
So the stage was set for a bench trial, with Ibarra's fate resting entirely on one judge's decision.
Wow, high stakes.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. You know, as we dive deeper into the Laken Riley case,
Yeah.
it's really important to remember that we're dealing with a very complex situation
Absolutely.
with a lot of evidence,
Yeah,
legal strategies, and unanswered questions.
definitely. And when we left off, we were
Mm.
talking about Ibarra's decision to opt for a bench trial,
Right.
and that put his fate in the hands of a single judge.
A huge gamble.
It really was. And I'm still trying to understand why his defense team made that call.
Yeah, it was a fascinating legal maneuver.
It really was.
Remember, this case had become a media sensation,
Oh, yeah, it was everywhere.
and Ibarra's immigration status had become a major point of public debate.
Absolutely. So maybe his defense team thought a judge would be less influenced by public opinion.
It's possible they might have felt a judge would be less likely to be swayed by the emotions
Right.
surrounding the case and focus more on the legal aspects.
More objective.
Exactly.
But it's still such a risk.
Oh, absolutely.
With a single judge, there's no room for appeal.
That's right. It's one shot.
It's a big one. But it's also worth noting that the prosecution wasn't seeking the death penalty.
That's true.
So that might have played a role in their decision too.
Yeah, it's possible.
Maybe knowing the death penalty wasn't on the table made them feel more comfortable with the bench trial.
Could be. It's interesting to think about all the factors that went into that choice.
For sure.
It wasn't a simple one.
Not at all. So let's talk about the trial itself.
Okay.
The victim impact statements from Laken's family and friends.
Yeah.
They were incredibly powerful.
Those are always the most emotional moments in these kinds of trials.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they give a voice to the victims and their loved ones, letting them share the real human cost of the crime,
Right.
the pain, the loss, the injustice.
It's heartbreaking
It really is.
to hear them talk about Laken.
Yeah.
Her personality, her
Yeah.
dedication to her studies, all her dreams for the future.
It reminds everyone that this is about a real person,
Exactly.
not just a case file.
Not at all.
Mhm.
And then there's the moment when the prosecution played the body cam footage
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
of the officer who found Laken's body.
I remember.
Some of her family members had to leave the courtroom.
Understandably
It
so.
was just too much.
It's a difficult balance, right?
Yeah.
The prosecution needs to present the evidence.
Right.
But that evidence can be so traumatic,
I've
like for
cited
the
her.
victim's loved ones.
Now, there's one decision by the defense that I always found interesting.
What's that?
They chose not to call Diego to the stand.
That is interesting,
Why wouldn't they want to hear from him?
especially if they were suggesting he might have been involved.
It seems like a missed opportunity.
Well, there are a few possible explanations.
Okay.
Maybe they thought his testimony would be too risky.
How so?
He could have contradicted their narrative.
Right.
Or maybe revealed information that would hurt his brother's case.
Yeah, accidentally.
Plus, he had his own legal issues to worry about.
Oh, right. The fake green card.
Exactly. Putting him on the stand would have opened him up to cross-examination.
And who knows what would have come out then.
Right. It could have been disastrous.
So maybe they felt like it was better to keep him off the stand.
Protect both brothers.
Even if it meant not using him to support their case.
It's a tough call.
A legal dilemma for sure.
Absolutely.
So they kept control over the narrative by limiting the information presented to the judge.
Makes sense.
But it also leaves us with all these unanswered questions about Diego's role.
The mystery remains.
It does. So after all the evidence and arguments were presented, the judge deliberated for only about 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Before returning with a verdict.
Wow. That's incredibly fast.
It really is. I mean, a decision of that magnitude.
It's hard to fathom.
It really is.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the strength of the prosecution's case.
It must have been very compelling.
To lead to such a quick decision.
Absolutely. No room for doubt, it seems.
So do you think the judge's decision to reach a verdict so quickly was influenced at all by the emotional weight of the case?
Or the public pressure?
It was a high-profile case.
It's impossible to know for sure what goes on in a judge's mind during deliberations.
But they're trained to be impartial.
That's right.
To make decisions based solely on the law and the evidence.
Exactly.
So even though it was a high-profile case, with a lot of public scrutiny,
the
judge would have approached it with the same objectivity
Yeah, it's the idea.
and professionalism.
As any other case.
That's reassuring.
It's the foundation of our justice system.
But the speed of the verdict is still striking.
It is. I understand why you'd question it.
Yeah.
It was such a complex and emotional case.
Right.
But ultimately, we have to trust that the judge followed the proper procedures.
And made a decision based on the evidence.
Exactly.
And that decision was a guilty verdict on all charges.
Including murder.
Including murder.
That must have been a heavy moment.
Ibarra was sentenced to life in prison.
Okay.
Without the possibility of parole.
Wow.
The harshest punishment short of the death penalty.
A reflection of the crime's severity.
It really is.
And society's need for justice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But even with the conviction and the sentence, there are still those lingering questions.
Always are.
Like, what was Ibarra's motive?
Right. Why did he do it?
We still don't know for sure.
That's a question that haunts so many cases. The search for motive.
Sometimes it's clear.
Revenge, a crime of passion.
But in other cases,
it remains a mystery.
It's hard to make sense of a crime like this.
I know.
A young woman goes for her morning jog.
It's just senseless.
It is. And then there's the question of Diego.
Yes. His potential involvement.
Did he play a role?
Was he protecting his brother?
Or was he completely innocent?
Caught in the middle of this nightmare.
It's like a piece of the puzzle is missing.
And it leaves us with this feeling of unease.
Exactly.
Like we'll never have all the answers.
The memorial mural for Laken at Lake Herrick.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful tribute.
It is.
But it's also a reminder of the impact this tragedy has had.
On the whole community.
Exactly. It's a place for healing and remembrance.
A place to grieve together.
This case has also sparked a lot of debate.
Oh, yeah.
About campus safety violence against women.
Big issues.
It's forced us to think about how we can create safer environments.
Absolutely.
Especially on college campuses.
Where young people should feel safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's the Laken Riley Act.
Right. The legislation that followed.
It focuses on detaining undocumented immigrants accused of theft.
A controversial bill.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really fueled the debate about immigration policy and crime.
How they intersect.
This case brought those tensions to the forefront.
It's a reminder that these conversations are necessary.
Even if they're difficult.
Especially if they're difficult.
We need to grapple with the complexities
Absolutely.
of crime justice social policy.
If we want to build a more just society?
You know, as we've been talking about this, I've been thinking about the emotional weight of it all.
I understand.
The pain, the grief, the loss.
It's palpable.
Even for those of us who weren't directly connected.
Trauma ripples outward.
It does.
It affects everyone.
I can't imagine what Laken's family and friends have been through.
Unimaginable loss.
And the community, too.
Mm-hmm.
How has this case impacted their sense of safety?
That's a good question.
Athens is a college town.
A place where you should feel carefree.
This must have shaken them.
It did. It shattered their sense of peace.
It made them confront the reality of violence.
The vulnerability we all share.
It's a sobering reminder.
It is.
That even in places we think are safe, there are vulnerabilities.
We're not immune.
It's a call to action.
It is.
To be more vigilant.
To look out for one another.
To create a culture of respect.
Where violence is less likely.
In the end, The Laken Riley case is about so much more
than just a crime.
You're
right.
It's about a young life cut short.
A community in mourning.
The society wrestling with these complex questions.
About justice and safety.
It's a case that challenges us.
To look beyond the headlines.
To engage with the complexities.
To search for meaning in the midst of tragedy.
It will stay with us.
It will.
Long after the final verdict.
Prompting us to reflect, to question, to work towards a better future.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into the Laken Riley case, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the ripple effects of this whole thing.
The lasting impact.
Exactly. You know, how has it impacted the community? And what are the broader conversations that it's sparked?
It's important to remember
that
these cases, they don't just end with a verdict.
Right.
They leave behind a lot of grief, trauma, unanswered questions.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the most visible reminders of that is the memorial mural for Laken at Lake Herrick.
It's a beautiful tribute.
It really is.
But it's also a powerful symbol of the community's grief and their need for healing.
It's a place where people can come together.
To remember to mourn, to find comfort.
This case has also sparked a lot of debate about campus safety.
Of course.
And violence against women.
Sadly, those are issues that are always relevant.
They are. And it's forced us to think about how we can create safer environments.
Especially on college campuses.
Right, where students should feel safe and protected.
Absolutely. Laken's case tragically highlights those vulnerabilities.
It does.
And it emphasizes the need for prevention.
And then there's the Laken Riley Act.
Right, the legislation that followed.
Which focuses on detaining undocumented immigrants.
Accused of theft.
It's a very controversial bill.
It is. It's definitely fueled the debate about immigration and crime.
How they intersect.
This case has really brought those tensions to the forefront.
It's a reminder that we need to have these tough conversations.
Absolutely.
Even if they're uncomfortable.
Exactly. To grapple with the complexities of justice and social policy.
To create a more just society.
You know, as we've been talking about all of this, I keep thinking about the emotional weight of this case.
It's heavy.
It is. The pain, the grief, the sense of loss.
It affects everyone.
And I can't even imagine what Laken's family and friends have gone through.
It's unimaginable.
To lose someone you love so suddenly and so senselessly.
They've endured the unimaginable.
And what about the Athens community? How have they been impacted?
It's shaken their sense of safety, for sure.
It's a college town. Yeah, a place where you should feel carefree.
And this case just shattered that.
It did. It forced them to confront the reality of violence.
It's a reminder that these things can happen anywhere.
To anyone.
We're not immune. It's a call to action.
It is.
To be more aware, to look out for each other.
To create a culture of respect.
In the end,
the
Laken Riley case is about so much more than just a crime.
You're right.
It's a young life cut short, a community grappling with loss.
A society wrestling with these really tough questions.
About justice, safety, the nature of evil.
It makes you think.
It does. It challenges us to look deeper, to engage with the complexities.
To search for meaning in the midst of tragedy.
This is a case that will stay with us.
Absolutely.
Long after the verdict.
It will make us reflect, make us question, make us work towards a better future.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
And I hope it's given you a better understanding of this tragic case.
I hope so.
And its impact. So if this deep dive resonated with you, please subscribe and leave a comment.
We love hearing from you.
We do. Let us know your thoughts. And if you have a case that keeps you up at night, share it with us.
Yeah, we're always looking for new cases to explore.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay safe.